Previously on the American Justice Podcast.
And then he was like, yeah, that's what she knows, so don't let her know that we threw him over the overpass. Don't let her know that I threw him over the overpass. Me and Joe, and so I'm sorry, I'm ADD type.
There is an epidemic in America's criminal justice system. The prosecution and conviction of innocent people for crimes they did not commit. Welcome to American Justice. The American Justice Podcast Army works to free men and women wronged by the criminal justice system. It's not only about the innocent who have been imprisoned, but also the victims of the crimes as well. No one deserves justice more than them. And now, here's your host, Scott Poggensee.
Welcome back, AJ Army. Welcome back to your podcast. I call you all the AJ Army because I'm convinced that given enough people following this story and enough time, someone, somewhere, who knows something, is going to come forward to help solve this crime once and for all. Wouldn't it be amazing if one of my listeners cracked the case wide open? I am convinced at this point that the person or people responsible for this crime are listening. There's too much buzz around this case right now for whoever slaughtered Dennis and Norma Woodruff not to be paying attention. I just have one thing to say to those people. Me and my army are coming for you. And we will not give up until Brandon is free and you are behind bars. Michael Gregory Etherington. Last week, we covered the first half of his interview with Ranger Collins. As you heard, most of what he had to say up until this point was just kind of rambling, if you will, about Brandon and Mike's lives together. Put all of the psychoanalyzing aside, and what you have at the core is someone that sought out investigators to come in and give slanderous statements about a murdered couple's son. Who does that? I mean, seriously, who says to themselves, yeah, that couple that was just killed in their own home, I'm going to go talk shit about their son to the investigators. Now, don't get me wrong. If someone has legitimate evidence or leads to offer the police, then by all means, call them up and tell them what you've got. But what we have here from Mike is not information about the murders, but just things that make Brandon seem weird. No leads, no eyewitness evidence, nothing but Brandon's a bad dude. I just don't get it. But here we are. All right, back to the interview. Next up in the treasure trove of slander is what Mike refers to as the, quote, steroid incident. It comes out of a story about a time at Denny's when Brandon was just so enraged that he had to call Mike, the savior, up there to defend Brandon's honor. I'm not sure exactly what made Mike think that he was such a badass, considering he was just as scrawny as Brandon at this point, but he did. So here's Mike, finishing up the Denny's story, transitioning into the steroid incident. Oh, and you know how to tell when someone's lying, right? They say blah 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 a lot. Here you go.
The main kid, was I just pull around and seriously, I had my headlights on his car. As soon as I was about to park, I see the kid swing in and just swing at Brandon. Brandon said he missed and there wasn't a mark, which is the fact that he swung. And, at the distance, I just saw, because his cab light, I saw the kid swing in and Brandon go like this. So I put my car in park, I run up there and I grabbed the kid, and I pulled him back, and I was like, what's going on, and stuff like that. And then Brandon, was on his cell phone. He goes, my uncle's a lawyer. You just effed up. You really effed up, blah, blah, blah. And the kid was kind of backing away, and I was like, what's, this? And he goes, well, he called my mom a Pia, and stuff like that. And I was just like, okay. I was like, so what? I said, so what if I call her that? You gonna come after me? And he was just like, well, no, because he goes, well, he's been saying it for a long time, blah, blah, blah. He's got what he's got coming to him, blah, blah. Next thing you know, I turn around. I see Brandon coming with his little steroids that he would give to him. He would get for his pig, but he'd give it to himself. And he comes out, he pulls the little cartridge off the needle.
Did you ever physically see him give it?
No, but there's a scar on his arm where he did give it to himself.
How do you know that that's how he got the
scar? Dustin Perry works at a vet clinic. He knows a lot of it because like you can give that stuff out for like horses or pigs or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's his excuse to getting them was for his pig. Well, Dustin told him, he said, to put it in the biggest, in a big muscle in your body that can absorb it, and break the steroid down, which being your butt cheek. Well, Brandon's stupid. I mean, this kid's an idiot. Puts it in his arm. Tells us at school, oh, it's a spider bite. Well, why does the spider bite start eating your skin like really big, and this weird, ugly, stuff starts growing out of it? Well, Dustin.
Well, I thought that's what a brown recluse or something does, doesn't it?
No, Dustin said that Brandon was worried. Brandon called Dustin and said that he had given the shot to himself in the arm, which the muscle's way too small. He said that the muscle started eating away at the skin where the hole was, where the steroid went in. It started eating away at it, and the muscle was growing out, is what it was. Like a muscle, some weird, ugly thing. But that's what that big old scar on his arm is. It wasn't no brown recluse, And so that was the steroid incident.
So, there we have it. The steroid incident. I could parade a bunch of people in here to contradict his story, but I think the fact that I have yet to ever see a picture of Brandon over about 135 pounds proves that he was no steroid user. I've known a few people that have used steroids, and let's just suffice it to say they don't stay slender and skinny for long. Now, I know what a lot of you are going to say. Well, Scott, you have to work out to get gains from steroids. Don't worry. Mike says about 2 minutes later how much Brandon worked out and how he was getting swole. Only problem is, no one else ever saw that. And his bookend picture, taken the day before this interview, showed Brandon to be the skinny boy that everyone else knew. Long story short, this is just another one of Mike's fantasies about Brandon that will soon be very apparent. It almost sounded like he was jealous or even feeling some attraction to Brandon. You be the judge.
Okay, because he had a number of them, and whenever he pulled it out, I said, what is that? And he goes, it's the steroid shot that that he's been getting and stuff like that. And another reason of saying that it was a steroid, at that time he's also doing a lot of working out. That's whenever he started stripping, he has to look real big on the stage. He started working out. He was always a skinny little kid. But if you look at him now, he's got the little chest. He's a small frame, but he's got the muscle tone and stuff like that. He was always working out, taking his steroids, and within a matter of not even 2 weeks, this kid had got chest, little arms and stuff like that, and real tone, and bigger than he could have ever thought he could have been.
Now, if you don't mind indulging me for just a minute, I thought we could use a little bit of comic relief in the middle of all this field of bullshit. Pay close attention because it's one of the rare moments that I'm going to give accolades to Ranger Collins. In the middle of all these, shall we say, stories that Mike is telling, Ranger Collins finally calls him out on what we've all been thinking. Mike, you're barely a couple pounds bigger than Brandon. What makes you the tough guy? Here's Ranger Collins actually playing the role of investigator. It doesn't happen often, so listen closely.
Well, tell me something before you go any further. Are you like the tough guy of the group? Because it's like
I'm not going to take action, but if something does happen, I'm going to defend my friend,
Mm-hmm.
And so
I mean, you're 165 pounds, and you've been out of high school now for what, 6 months?
Yeah.
Were you 165 pounds in high school?
I was 160 in high school. I only gained 5 pounds.
Okay.
So I'm not.
But I mean, when I was in high school, I was like 215, 220.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, that wasn't like, it's not like, people would just look at me like, because I've never gotten in fights or anything like that.
Okay, so
It's
you're
just-
not a fighter.
Exactly.
And but for
But if
some
something
reason
happens-
you keep on saying, man,
If
they're
something
calling me to come over
if
here.
something happens, then they know that I've grown up with a brother that beats the junk out of me, whatnot. And,
So you can take the beating,
I can
huh?
take a beating like no other and resist, but while at it, I can throw a few hits at them, and hopefully they won't endure it as well as I can, and that's
Right.
kind of how it would happen.
So now we know Mike's secret to being the tough guy. He can take a beating like no other. Way to go, Ranger Collins. Way to go. All right, thanks for the indulgence. Back to the interview. Okay. So a couple minutes later, after some more stories about how Brandon did anything for attention, it looks like we're finally getting to the real reason that Mike is here. He finally has information as to why Brandon killed his parents. Well, at least that's what he's leading us to believe.
And anyway, the thing of it was is, here's where his parents come into hand about towards like, I guess hatred and stuff like that. He'd always be lying to him, stuff like that. Well, when he started hanging out with Doug and we were all like, dude, he's doing crack or something. I mean, something's just messed up. Something ain't right with him. Well, he'd been stripping all this time. Something ain't right with him. And he didn't know that we knew about the actual payroll on stripping. And we're like, man, he's stupid. He's going to get caught or something.
Payroll.
Like, he's a was it Thursday and Sunday night dancer.
But this time he's on the payroll over at the Bears.
Yeah, this is time had progressed, and he's now on the payroll of the Bears.
When was this? I mean, less than a year ago?
Oh yeah, this is end of senior year.
End of senior year?
Yeah, and we're just like, this is just getting too bizarre. We're so surprised he hasn't got caught with anything. Well, it turns out his parents were catching on to him, and the one thing that that's one reason why he hates me or has some big thing against me is because I'm two-faced. Well, because I always caught on to him, and the people that he would do things to, like lie to, just anything, I would, when after he'd left, after he's like, don't tell him, I'm like, oh yeah, and I'd go up to him, I'd be like, just look out for Brandon, this is what's going on. Well, that's why I'm two-faced, is because I guess you have to be two-faced with them, I'll be honest, I am two-faced to Brandon Woodruff, I am. I have to be.
Okay. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Right from the horse's mouth. Mike Etherington is two-faced when it comes to Brandon Woodruff. I'm sure you're all thinking at this point that Ranger Collins finally started looking at Mike as a suspect, as he should have done all along, right? I think we all know by now that's not true. The next thing of significance that comes up is something that I am honestly very surprised that investigators did not pick up on. Well, I mean, I would be surprised if these were actual impartial investigators trying to get to the truth, instead of trying to prove the person that they arrested was guilty. Mike starts to wonder where he is in his story about Brandon. That's right, you heard me correctly. Mike didn't just start to wonder to himself, okay, let's see, what else can I tell them about Brandon? He literally talks to himself out loud, wondering where he is in the, quote, story, and what is next in the story. Just like he had a story planned out ahead of time, and he was trying to remember what chapter he was on. It's incredibly mind-blowing. Listen to this, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
Yeah, everything takes place, everything that I'm telling you, like the major stuff on him is what takes place around March till present, And anyway, so where was I? Good Lord, this story is so long and I'm ADD as can be. Okay, so we'd gone through the parent deal, started getting with the parents.
Mm-hmm.
We'd after okay, well I guess then the fight comes around, I guess, in the timeline, I guess you could say is the fight between him and Joe.
Wow. Wouldn't you like to have the playbook that Mike was reading from? I've listened to many, many witness interviews. Well, not that Mike was a witness interview since he didn't actually witness anything, but still, I've listened to and watched many interviews, and at no time have I ever heard anyone sit there and talk to themselves and ask themselves, where were they in the pre-rehearsed story they had in their heads? It's absolutely mind-blowing. Great job, Ranger Collins. All right, next we move on to the homosexual stuff. Yep, Mike's about to drop a, not so surprising at this point, bombshell that Brandon was gay. After about 10 or 15 minutes of rambling about Joe and Brandon getting into this scuffle at school, Mike starts letting the hapless investigators in on his little secret. It's not known at this point whether or not Ranger Collins bothered to visit S4, the club that Brandon visited on the night of the murders, but it doesn't take a whole lot to find out that it's predominantly a gay club. A quick Google search will probably show you some pictures that any self-respecting straight man, especially one in a cowboy hat and a Texas-sized belt buckle, would not want to see. Either way, Mike's about to get into what makes him think that Brandon's gay. And to our surprise, it sounds like Mike had a young gay admirer as well. Let's see how that turned out. First though, he's got to get back to the stripping, because we all know that strippers automatically kill their parents.
Anyways, at the deal, Perry was telling me, we're just like, dude, he's changed so much. And that's whenever he tells me, he's like, did you not know that he's been stripping at, stuff, because earlier that day he told me that it's for sure that he's been on payroll stripping. And we just kind of cracked jokes, kind of like, I wonder, what he's going to wear to the deal, and like the idea of him being a homosexual is starting to come out on the table.
And why did that come out on the table?
All these hidden friends and stuff like that. And all through, ever since the kid began, he'd walk up, this is his little cell phone, and he'd have his cup, and he'd walk up every morning. All through senior year, it's just we kind of overlooked it and never really cared much for it. But like whenever he started really changing and things were going, sour and just going south with him, he'd walk up and he'd be like on his cell phone. He'd have his cell phone, his cup, and he'd walk like this up to school, and he'd always, and it was just everything. The way that he talked, everything, it's like, it doesn't surprise me that he's, trying to try new things.
So you're saying that it was the mannerisms then?
Yes, that's what it was at the time.
But it's only the mannerisms.
Mannerisms at the time. And so we're just teasing around like, he's, after the fight and everything, it's just, he's just that, we're just kind of, pestering. We didn't like come up to him and talk to him about it, but just, between me, Joe, and Perry, we'd kind of be like, dude, something was just really screwed up. Is he gay or something like that? And people, we just kind of talk about like, we don't have any doubt that he's going to be gay once high school's over, because why would he have anything to hide? So.
Do you have a problem with him if he's gay?
No, that's what I said. I've talked, kids that are gay, I've never had any problem with them. Now the rule goes for me, if you're gay, you stay to yourself, we talk, that's fine, A kid all through my junior year sat behind me in physics class. We chit-chat just fine, but whenever he started, giving me food and candy every day, and I started hearing from his friends that were, his little girlfriends, whatever, that he had a little thing for me, it's kind of, so I straight up told him, I was just like, dude, just keep your distance on me, I was just like, and I made it real clear about my girlfriend and stuff. I'd show him pictures of my girlfriend and tell him about like a date we had, the previous evening, and it's nothing like, you're a faggot, I hate you, this and that, and
well, but Brandon's got a girlfriend.
Brandon has a girlfriend. Now, I've been doing research and on, now not because of the Brandon issue, but because in one of my, classes, I had to do a speech on gay marriage, like, opposing it to debate speech. And I found out my partner is actually, she's a lesbian. And I told her, I said, well, I'm totally against gay marriage. It's just wrong, I said, it's totally wrong. It's a big sin and stuff. I said, and she goes, well, I'm totally for it. And I'm like, she said, well, I'm gay, I said, no offense, I don't have anything problem with you being gay. It's just, if you're going to go around, flaunting it in front of me or something like that, it just makes me uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. I won't do anything. I said, so don't take anything that I say offensive. It's a debate speech. There's going to be harsh words said probably. So just leave it at that. I said, I don't have a problem with gay people. I said, a friend of mine, once he graduated, he came out of his shell and stuff like that. And I said, just stuff like that. I said, there's a gay kid in my physics class all junior year. I talk to him every time I see him up at Walmart because he works at Walmart, this Russell Gibson kid. I'll talk to him and stuff like that and just be like, hey, what's up, dude, And anyway, so I have a problem with gay people.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, what did we learn from that clip? First, it turns out that Mike is an amateur sleuth. Ranger Collins brings up that Brandon had a girlfriend, even though Mike thinks he's gay. So what he's basically saying is that just because you have a girlfriend doesn't mean you're not gay. Or something like that. At least that's what I think Ranger Collins was trying to say. It's hard to tell. Well, amateur detective Mike Etherington isn't going to let this pass. So he says he's been doing some research. But before he tells us what that research revealed, he has to go on and tell us that he's against gay marriage and he doesn't mind talking to gay people. What a great guy. He's nice enough to talk to gay people. Wow. Man of the Year award right there. He must not have liked the Supreme Court's decision that made gay marriage legal in 2015. I would have loved to have been a fly on his wall that day. All right, back to the case at hand. So in order to continue the Brandon is gay narrative, Mike has to tell Ranger Collins another story. This time, he brings in one of his friends named Michelle Manning. Apparently, Michelle had seen Brandon stripping at LeBare's, or a gay club, or something. It's not really clear. And I don't mean to get into a habit of this, but again, accolades to Ranger Collins, who actually calls bullshit on one of Mike's stories. I will, though, have to give Mike some credit here. He definitely thinks quickly on his feet to come up with an excuse when Ranger Collins calls him out. I won't say he comes up with a good excuse, but it's definitely something. Here, you be the judge.
It was like, dude, he goes, did you hear? I was like, what? He goes, Michelle Manning, which is a really good friend that we, known through high school. She's like, she was out at LeBare's, and she saw, I think it was, no, she went for a bachelorette party, and she saw him, like, making out with another guy, and she saw him stripping on stage, okay? So she said that she called Joe, told him that she'd seen Brandon stripping on stage. So we're like, no way. And we're like, I was just kind of, it was kind of like, new information. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this,
Well, I thought you already knew, though, the LeBare's
No,
stuff.
we just, that's the thing.
Suspected.
No, I mistake. Not LeBare's. I said that, I correct myself. It was the gay bar.
He was stripping on stage at a gay bar?
At a gay bar. Michelle'd seen him there.
Why is she having a bachelorette party at a gay bar?
Joe said it was a joke. He goes, well, they had a bachelor party. Instead of going straight to LeBare where there's going to be guys dancing, he said it'd be a funny joke for the, the group of girls to go to the gay bar,
We'll just leave that right there. It's now time to get into the real meat and potatoes of this interview. There's about to be 3 subjects that we're going to cover quite extensively. 2 of these things are things that just make you scratch your head in wonderment as to why or how they ever got by these police investigators investigating a capital murder. In Hunt County, Texas, this case was a pretty big deal at the time. One would assume that they assigned the most experienced and seasoned investigators to the case. Whether or not that's actually true, we'll never know. But what we do know is that some of these things that were not investigated further just go beyond any kind of reasonable comprehension. Now, the third subject that we're going to explore will literally have you wondering why Michael Gregory Etherington has not been arrested for this crime to this very day. Okay, let's start with subject number 1, the Myspace post. Before we get into this part of the actual interview, I want to take just a second to remind everyone where we are in the investigation. As Mike sits down for the interview with Ranger Collins, we're now 7 days after the bodies of Dennis and Norma Woodruff were found. It's exactly 1 day after their son, Brandon, was arrested for their murders. Mike Etherington and his mom, Norma, had been to the sheriff's office earlier in the week and talked to investigators to give them information that was ultimately included in Ranger Collins's arrest affidavit for Brandon. But now, the real reasoning for Etherington's contact to the sheriff's department. This is where Brandon's arrest becomes downright unbelievable. You see, way back in the year 2005, there was a social media platform called Myspace. It was the forerunner to the modern Facebook or Instagram and, in my opinion, was actually a much better platform. You could completely personalize your profile with backgrounds and music. People seemed to be much nicer back then, and I don't recall a single political discussion by anyone. Maybe it was just because the year 2005 was a much nicer year than, well, let's just say pretty much every year since then.
I don't suffer from insanity. I enjoy every minute of it. Did you know it's illegal for donkeys to sleep in bathtubs in Arizona? Also, to the guy who invented zero, thanks for nothing. These are just a few examples of some of the great mugs you can get at goodmonkeymugs.com. With same-day shipping on all orders placed before 3 p.m., your new mug will be at your doorstep in no time. Don't know what to give that coworker for their birthday? Or just want to brighten someone's day with a funny or inspirational quote? GoodMonkeyMugs.com is the place for you. And if you use the code AJARMY, your first mug is half price. Again, that's GoodMonkeyMugs.com. You'll go ape for our mugs.
But Mike Etherington, internet sleuth that he was, had heard from a friend who had heard from a friend that Brandon's Myspace page stated, quote, "I hate my fucking parents and I wish they were fucking dead," end quote. And as we discussed back in episode 11, this third-hand, unverified information went into Brandon's arrest affidavit, ultimately being used as probable cause for his incarceration. This information was swore to by one Ranger Collins as true and correct. Now you may wonder to yourself, how could it be used in an affidavit of fact if it was third-hand, unverified information? According to Ranger Jeffrey Collins, Mike Etherington offered it up as cold, hard, verified, first-hand information. Mike lied. Bottom line, he lied. Yes, godly and honest until the end. A man's freedom was taken away because he said that he personally knew information that he in fact did not. It's that easy. The reality was that Brandon's Myspace page said absolutely none of these things, and the originator of this rumor ultimately said that it, quote, said something like that, end quote. You see, when Mike gave the information to the investigators, he said that he saw the information himself. And what he didn't count on was that when he was talking to the investigator, Janie Simpson, with the Hunt County Sheriff's Department, she actually had the call on speakerphone, and Ranger Collins was listening in. And now, his BS would not make it past Ranger Collins without being called out. When Ranger Collins asks Mike about the Myspace statement, Etherington uses the word supposedly. You can hear the investigator hit the brakes, and the tone of the interview shifts from a story of friendship gone strange to, oh shit. Ranger Collins inquires deeper, only to be informed that this portion of his probable cause from the arrest affidavit, the one that had been placed in front of a judge, sworn to, signed, and then executed, was nothing more than hearsay. This dutiful investigator no longer seems to care about Mike's yearns of youthful yesterday, and the recent high school graduate begins to backpedal frantically. The boy's power of the room is immediately and completely gone. I'm going to play the first part of the clip where Ranger Collins finds out that Mike did not see the information on Myspace himself. Ranger Collins, at this point, is not furious, but he is rather upset. We'll save the explosive anger for a few minutes. But here's the first part. One thing I would like you to pay special attention to is how Mike talks over Ranger Collins. So, when Ranger Collins starts calling Mike out on his BS, Mike just doesn't stop talking and keeps talking over him and interrupting him. I wonder why. Also, if you're listening in on the podcast platform, I would suggest that you go find it in the YouTube channel and watch it on there. Just search for American Justice Podcast on YouTube and we should be the first result. But Ranger Collins' body language is nothing short of someone that's frustrated and exasperated. He takes off his hat, rubs his head, looks around as if to say, what the hell is happening right now? All kinds of fun stuff. It really is an amazing sight to see. All right, here we go. Enjoy.
If you get on his Myspace deal, well, actually the computer's been trashed, but his Myspace is still on. I don't know if he's, anybody's have changed it.
What do you mean his computer's been crashed?
Well, the computer where he had wrote and had text messages and stuff, because once upon a time, my friends would get on his Myspace whenever he first started, disliking us in the beginning of the summer or whatnot. And my friend Nicole Hembry would get on and she'd check it and she'd be like, oh, Brandon's saying this and that. And so she went to email me this thing that said what he was talking about us. And she had said that, although she had misread it, her friend had supposedly read it to Nicole and had misread or something. Anyway, some deal about, there's a question on there about, does he hate his parents, or do you get along with your parents? And not only had previously, whenever we were hanging out, he was like, I hate my effing parents, they need to go to hell, stuff like that. Whenever they're in their little, every time, whenever he started changing and they're catching on to him. But supposedly it had been said on there, my parents, I hate them, they need to go to hell, I wish they just effing die and go to hell. Well,
now you're saying supposedly, but over the phone you said that was on there.
Because I talked to Nicole after I got off the phone, because I remember Nicole told me she emailed me the paper that had it on there, and that was in the beginning of the summer whenever she said that, now it may have been on there whenever she originally emailed me the document, but she said that she looked on it, she goes, I don't remember exactly what it says, so she's looking on it, and she goes, no, it says this and that, it says nothing about hating his effing parents. She goes, but I remember telling you that. And then she goes, maybe Stephanie read it off to me wrong, or something, and I read it off to you wrong, but she goes, but it's not on there now, or something like that. And I was like, well, Nicole, his parents have been found dead. You think it's going to say it by now, And it said that his deal had last been changed. I think this Joe got on it. It said that it tells you when it was last updated or something like that, and it was supposedly last updated, I think Tuesday morning.
That's when it was last accessed.
Accessed or up, I don't know.
No, updated
accessed
was like September 21st.
Okay, well, then
something.
it was then whatever, last accessed or some deal. And then so I was just like, that's just, I didn't think anything of it. I said maybe it had been this, but she told me that she thinks it was a misunderstanding. But I remember at the time, it was in the very beginning of the summer, at the time whenever she read it off to me, she started saying how she was telling me how it was just, he was so mean to his parents in the internet little MySpace thing.
All right, Mike, let's hold on real quick because I want to, because the information that you provided, and I was in the room when you were giving it to Investigator Simpson. You were on the speakerphone, and you laid out that it was on that website that he had said these things.
Exactly, and this is what I was informed
Personal knowledge is what I was getting, and then when we pulled it up and looked at it and it was changed,
it said that
we got a call from you that said, hey man, that thing's been changed.
And
that thing's been changed.
And that's whenever, like I said, Nicole had called in a few times, and I was trying to get to that, and then that's whenever I'd gotten on with Nicole. I said, Nicole, what's the deal with that? I said that you told me a while back that this is what it was, And she goes, and she was like, oh no, that must have been a misunderstanding because it doesn't even say anything like that, Mike. And I was like, no, whenever you emailed me that original document a couple months ago, what did it originally say? She goes, oh, I don't remember and stuff like that. I was like, but you told me that he was ugly to his parents and that it said this. She goes, well, that must have been a misunderstanding and stuff like that. And that's whenever I'd also called Miss Jane. I called Jane Simpson back and left her a message and told her to call me whenever she can. I never got a call from her. But I was going to clarify to her that if she were to talk to Nicole...
Well, but here's the thing, Mike, is that the information that you provided was used as part of the probable cause.
Yeah, and that's...
You understand that?
Yes.
Okay, because that's what we're being told, is that this was on the website, that I hate my effing parents, I wish they were effing dead.
Yeah.
They're losers, I think, is what you said, and they never do a damn thing for me, or something like that. Those are the like the terminology that was used, okay? And that it's been changed.
Now,
and now that's only a little bit of the PC, but that right there is probable cause for arrest and for
not only whether it was on there or not. He had told me I hate my effing parents.
Okay, but I understand that. I'm just saying that now all of a sudden this is coming back to us a little bit different now than the way that it came to us the first time.
Exactly. And as of that time, I had been told that that's what they had read off of it. And I said, well, you know, I'm guessing y'all are going to probably want to want that, okay? And now that's whenever, like I said, at the time, that's what I was clear of knowledge that it had said that, but it was as of my assumption that in time it has changed.
All right. And you have to understand, I can't deal with assumptions.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's not how it came across. It came across as this is personal knowledge, and we don't use assumptions. But now I'm finding out that that's what's been used.
That was what assumption that I was told, but at the time that I told you that was of saying, you know, she had read it off to me, so therefore that was knowledge to me at the time.
All right.
But then later on, after we got the phone,
well, I mean, I can't do anything about it now because I've sworn out affidavits that said this is what I've been, you know, this is the information that has been received by investigators from you.
Exactly.
You know, and that's what we received, and now all of a sudden, I'm getting that that it was assumed on your part that was on there. Now, are you telling me that
I did not see it with my eyes, but my very good dear friend said that she had been on there and she had read things about him being negative against his parents. And she was like, "Oh my God, Mike, I can't believe that he had that."
All right. Give me just a minute, Mike.
I'm sorry about that. And I understand looking at it now from where y'all are getting that. So
I'm not sure if you caught that or not, but did you notice that Mike said that Brandon's Myspace page had last been changed on Tuesday morning? This would have been the morning of the day that Brandon's parents were found dead. And then Ranger Collins quickly corrected him and said that the page has been accessed on Tuesday, but the last time that it was changed was September 21st, which would have been almost a month before all of this happened. So what Mike is basically saying is that Brandon hated his parents so much that he posted it on the internet for the world to see and then killed them because he hated them so much. Then, 2 days after killing them, he realized, oops, I put that on the internet and I shouldn't have done that. So I'd better take it off and that way no one will ever know. Luckily, Ranger Collins actually did some investigating and found this not to be true. After what you just heard, Ranger Collins steps out to get something to drink so he can relax a little bit and they can change out the tapes that they're recording on. While the tapes are being changed, Mike does a second thing that we're going to talk about, but we'll wait for that until we finish up the first issue. So after they change out the tapes, Ranger Collins gets his drink and calms down a little bit. He comes back in to find out all of the other details about why Brandon is a cold-blooded killer. Funny thing is, Mike has other plans. He starts right back in apologizing for leading the Lone Ranger down the path of iniquity. Let's just say Ranger Collins is still upset. But now, his anger is turning to fury. Here it is.
Instead of water, I got him coming in, bringing some Cokes. Is Cokes all right with you?
That's fine. No, I really am sorry about the whole deal.
Well,
I told Joe, I said, remember?
Mike, here's the thing though that you got to understand, because you're on the telephone and I was in the room on the speakerphone listening to you give out that information, and that information was very matter of fact.
Exactly.
First-hand knowledge, and that's not what you're telling me right now.
Exactly.
And you have to understand that, you know, documents were prepared that I swear to, that this information came across to us.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, there's nothing I can do about that now. You know, I swore to the fact that that's what I believed was true and correct. And I stand beside that because at that time I believed that it was true and correct. You don't understand what kind of a bind, you know, that really puts you in for providing that information. I mean, I'm glad that we're getting this out of the way now. But it's not, this is not a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay? And it, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little excited.
No, I don't blame you. I mean, I'm just telling look back on it now, it's like, you know, I thought that it's giving it to you. I was like, you know, she told me that months ago, and I even recall her telling me, because that's what stuck in my mind. And that's one of the first things that triggered in my mind is what she'd read off to me months ago. Whenever the first thing I heard, his parents were killed, and where he was that day, where he was supposed to, everything just fall into place. I'm like, holy crap! I said, remember this? And then like I was just putting everything together, and so like giving it to y'all, it's like I figured that I didn't think that.
Well, that's information that's important.
Exactly.
We need to know if he hated his parents and, if he
I
wished
gave
they were
it to
dead.
y'all as a possibility, is like whether I had read it or not. Even if she told me that she'd read it,
that's not how it was. That's not how it was reported to us.
Exactly.
It was reported to us as, this is a factual thing.
Mm-hmm.
I know for a fact that the website. You didn't know what the website was, but I've seen it on the website that it said this. And that's what was used. Then we go back up on the website and actually find a website, pull up the profile,
Mm-hmm.
and it says, do you get along with your parents? And it said something like,
yes.
Yes.
LOL.
LOL. Really, I love them.
Yeah.
Okay? And then we get a call. We didn't make contact with you. You made contact with us saying that's been changed.
Mm-hmm.
That has been changed.
Because that's whenever I got on the website and I was like, it's not on there. I talked to Nicole and she goes, no. She goes, either it's been changed or it's been misread. She goes, I must have just misread it then. And I was like, Nicole. And I was like, I told them that this
All right, Mike, it would have been a whole lot better if we had been contacted and told, hey, it was misread. That's just a
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that that was changed.
Yeah.
That was changed on that website.
And for all I know, she may have read it for the right way and it was changed, and that's why his computer may be missing if it is.
Okay. I just got a problem with using assumptions that were really reported to us as this is firsthand information.
Yeah.
Okay? So we don't. Has anything else that you've told us in this interview?
That's the only thing that
you got firsthand knowledge.
That's the only thing that I took as fishy information that knowing that y'all could research deeply, that I'm pretty sure that y'all could somehow have, like if it was on that hard drive. My mom had told me that she's always preached that the hard drives can be restored.
Mm-hmm.
I said, and so knowing that wasn't 100% from my eyes, knowing that Nicole had once read it off to me was like, well, if that's the fact, then I know that I'm pretty sure that if it was on that computer,
Mike, that can be done.
Exactly.
But it takes time.
Exactly.
Okay?
And I told my mom.
But let me ask you something. Would you want somebody to come along and give information on you that puts you in jail while it takes us several months or something to investigate something like that while you're sitting in jail?
No.
You wouldn't want that, would you?
Not at all.
Okay? So now that puts Brandon in a bind. I'm not saying that that's the only probable cause on this thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very, very small portion. But I'm saying that you provided information to investigators that was used as probable cause to where he's sitting in a jail cell right now. We've taken his liberty away from him. That's one of the hardest things that a police officer has to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Is remove somebody's liberty to in the home of the land of the free and the home of the brave. I mean, that people expect their freedom, they expect their liberty, and here information that you have provided has been used as part of probable cause to take somebody's liberty away from them.
Yeah.
Okay? I got a problem. I got a huge problem with that. I don't necessarily have a problem with what has happened, okay, because there's other probable cause. All right, and yours may not have been needed to do that, but I'm telling you that that was me that swore those affidavits out. Okay, that wasn't somebody else. That's me. That's why I'm upset about the fact that now the information is just I don't even know that it's secondhand. Okay, now you're telling me right now that you heard from his own mouth that he hated his parents and he wished they were dead.
In his truck at Walmart, right after he got the phone with his dad.
Okay, but that's not how it was reported in the application.
No, but I remember telling Janie in the phone that we were in his truck and he had just got the phone with his parents, and that's whenever he said it to me. You
understand though, growing up, I don't know how many times I heard my sister say I hate my parents.
And that's what I'm saying.
And my parents aren't dead.
Okay?
Exactly. And there's a big difference between a teenager who just says I hate my parents. That by itself to me does not mean a whole lot.
Then I told Jane, she goes, does he say it more than anyone else? I said, I wouldn't say that because in the crowd, the people that do say it, he said it just about as often as they did, as anybody else.
And I remember hearing that.
And
but you understand that the thing with the web page, and then that, hey, that's been changed. And you're the one who called us with that, saying that's been changed.
Yeah.
That's been changed. Okay? The changing of it is what, to me, is what, do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
Okay?
Now.
There's one thing that it's documented, it's written down on paper or on the computer or whatever, and then something like this happens, and that's been changed. That creates a problem to me when you're looking at that from an investigative standpoint. Okay? If somebody misread it, then to me that's not a problem. Okay? That's not an issue. We don't need to be looking there.
Yeah.
We've been looking there because of the information that was provided by you.
Well, I'm saying I wouldn't stop looking there because I don't know why she would have read it off to me wrong in the beginning.
And who was it? Who was the person that read it off to you in the beginning?
Nicole Hembry, and I don't know if she remembers much detail, but if you need any detail on that phone conversation,
I'll call her because we're gonna have to. That's got to be cleared up.
And so the last I'd heard from her was she must have misread it to me. So,
boy, I know I wouldn't want to be sitting in jail because somebody misread something.
Boy, I sure would too. This whole Myspace issue is such a cluster that I could literally go on for days and days about it. I would suggest that you check out the whole interview on our YouTube page to see all of the BS that Mike is spewing all over the place. It'll leave you wondering if there is any hope for humanity after listening to that carnage. I do want to bring up one more point real quick about this particular issue. If you remember in that clip, Mike said that he saw the webpage and knew that it had been changed. But what you're about to hear is going to make your head spin. All of a sudden, Mike now claims he's never seen that webpage. I'm not sure which one it is, but here's the clip.
I haven't had internet access forever, and I've never seen this website, but I remember telling that Nicole has always been the one that has seen it. I've never seen it.
How'd you know it was changed?
I said, how to know that it was changed?
Yeah, Mike, how did you know it was changed? You'll have to log on to the YouTube page and watch the whole interview to see how Mike squirrels his way out of that one. Okay, so kudos once again to Ranger Collins for not letting the BS pass him by without at least saying something. Even if it really wasn't a true care, it seemed like it was. So after a few more moments, Ranger Collins has had enough. He's going to tell Mike that he has to take a break so he doesn't kill him. Interesting interview technique, if you ask me.
No, well, sit and talk to him real quick because I right now, I mean, I hate to tell you this, Mike, but I'm just about ready to strangle you. You know what I mean?
I understand it 100%.
And I just want to step out for just a moment, and I just want to regain my composure. I don't want to raise my voice to you. I just want to interview you. I just want to get as much information as I can.
I'm a very disciplinary kid.
And I need to kind of step back for just a moment and just you talk to him and just please. Okay?
Okay. So now that we've talked about that aspect of the final stages of the interview, we're going to delve into a subject that is simply put, strange. When I first watched this interview, this jumped out at me like one of those videos that you have your friends stare at to see what is out of place, and then all of a sudden a ghost pops up and scares the bejesus out of them. Well, that's what this did for me. Let me know if you feel the same way. All right, let's set the stage. When Ranger Collins goes to change out the tapes, it doesn't take long. There's a few seconds that are not recorded, and it's just Mike sitting there at the interview table playing with his empty cup. However, almost as soon as they start the second tape up, while Mike is still alone in the interview room, Mike decides to call Joe Hagaman back. Joe had already called at least twice, possibly more times. So Joe is really itching to see what's going on in that interview. Maybe he's just calling to check up on Mike and make sure that Ranger Collins hasn't arrested him. Who knows? Little did he know that Ranger Collins is just as clueless as all of the investigators. Okay, so Mike is in the interview room alone and calls Joe back. Here's the conversation, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
Hey, what's up? I'm still up here. They're switching out tapes and stuff like that. So. No, they're recording with the deal, so they had to switch out the tapes and we get a drink of water. Why? No. I told him, I said, I don't want to get too into this, but supposedly it's what they need. Well, I mean, what you gonna, I mean, if you just, I mean, I'm not like straight up, I mean, you don't sit there and just say, you can't sit there and just say it's him. You have to tell him everything that you know about him, you know, all the good things that, you know, have happened and stuff like that. And Joe, you do. Oh. Joe, you're getting upset. Chill. You don't. I know. I'm watching how deep I get into it. I mean, if you don't want to, I said I'm watching how deep I get into it. I mean, what I'm doing here, it's not like you're straight up saying, oh yeah, Brandon did or some deal like that. You're just simply telling them what you know of Brandon, how you know him, what it is, how everything's gone, how y'all's friendship has gone on and stuff like that. It's not like, what do you know about Brennan doing this or that? They're not saying that he did or didn't do it. They're just wanting to know information on him to see if they have a good enough case to put against him. Or what? Okay. It's not that big of a deal. If you don't want to do the little recording, it's fine. I thought it's just what you have to do. But I don't know. No, but in order to take him to court, you have to show enough evidence to say that could be against him. You see what I'm saying? I don't have to. Joe, you don't come in here and bash Brandon. You can't be doing that crap. You have to tell. All I've told him, Joe, is all about how, growing up, just, all the good things, we'd all hang out and stuff like that. And it was like a brotherhood. And then I've told him facts that they can find out on their own. Okay? So. Well, I don't blame you. I didn't want anything to do with it either. Well, if they find him, some deal, put him in some hospital or something like that, and he gets out 5-10 years and I'm missing, who did it. I know, that's what I want. That's what I told my mom. I said, I'm not going to go on stand or anything like that, it's not asking like, what do you know on Brandon about this? You know, it's just tell us a little about your relationship. Yeah. And that's all it is. I'm telling him all the things that I've telling him all the things that I've picked up on Brandon and some of the things that he was doing that, you know, he shouldn't have been doing, and just stuff like that, you know. No, I mean, they asked about the fight and stuff. Like, it's funny, one guy was like, so who got the better half of the deal? I was like, I think Joe did. They just, I mean, it's all have reported documents on the fight, so they don't, you know, if they need anything special in the fight, they can just look up that crap, you know. I wouldn't want anything to do with it either, but if that's what they need. Yeah, I know. But yeah, you know how like Nicole had told me all that stuff that she read off a couple months ago, and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden she looked it up and she's like, no, I don't see it. She's like, maybe I was just misreading it, or maybe I misread it or some deal. Yeah, you know what? They used that crap because, you know, I told them they were assuming like they were assuming that I had seen it myself, you know. And so they put that crap on the news and so I come in here, and I talked to Nicole since then, and she goes, no, I must have been misreading it because it's, you know, it says nothing like that on there. And she goes, I know what you're talking about, but she goes, it's a long time ago, I must have just misread it or some deal because it's not on there. And so I was like, oh, well, great, Nicole, you know, stuff like that. And it turns out they actually pulled out, used, you know, I mean, they had a right to do it. It's just like, you know, and then once I told them that, you know, Nicole told me that she must have misread it, then, you know, it wasn't cool, you know. They just, I mean, they were just, he got up and, no, not really like that, sort of.
Before we pull out specific parts of this conversation with Joe, I think it's important to point out that Mike thinks he's talking to Joe alone with no one listening. So we're starting to get the real Mike, it seems at least. He's quite obviously large and in charge, and it's very apparent that Mike is definitely the one calling the shots or controlling the puppet strings, if you will. Okay, let's talk about a few statements here. First, Mike seems to be telling Joe that he can't just come in there and say Brandon did it. You have to disguise it. He says, quote, I'm not straight up, I mean, you don't sit there and just say, Joe, you do. Joe, chill. You're getting upset. I'm watching how deep I get into it. I said, I'm watching how deep I get into it. I mean, what I'm doing here, it's not like you just straight up saying, oh yeah, Brandon did it, or some deal like that. End quote. Let's just all sit here and think about that for a few seconds. All right, so let's look at what's going on here. You can't just sit there and say it's him. It's not like you're straight up saying, oh yeah, Brandon did it. Let me know in the comments if you disagree, but to me, this is basically telling Joe he can't just come in there and be like, hey, Brandon was the one that did this. You're going to have to sit there and have a little more finesse about it. You're going to have to get them to believe that without actually saying that. When I first watched this video and heard this, I literally dropped the pen that I had. If that's not an inculpatory statement, I don't know what is. You absolutely have to wonder, what was Mike's motivation behind trying to convince Ranger Collins that Brandon was guilty? This shows that Mike was not just sitting there trying to say, hey, you know what? Brandon's a weird dude and maybe you should look at him a little bit more. This is showing that Mike's number one and only reason for being in that interview room is to convince him that Brandon was guilty. I just don't get it. I mean, I thought he was there just to provide some background on Brandon, to give the investigators a little more insight into the kind of person that Brandon was. But now we're hearing that he's coaching Joe on how to come in and talk to the investigators. Now, to Ranger Collins' defense, he wasn't in the room when all of this was going on, but he definitely had access to the tapes after Mike left. And one thing I've been told that investigators do quite often is to leave suspects or people they're interviewing alone in a room to see what they say. Here is a prime example of why they would do that. It's too bad that Ranger Collins didn't care to go back and look. Or maybe he did and he just didn't care. Either way, it's downright sad. All right, moving on. Don't worry, it gets better. The next statement just absolutely floored me when I first heard it. Mike says to Joe, "I don't blame you. I didn't want anything to do with it either." Then there was about 10 seconds of silence when Joe is obviously giving him an earful. And Mike says this, quote, "Well, if they find him, some deal, put him in a mental hospital or something like that, and he gets out in 5 or 10 years, and then I'm missing, you know who did it." I know. That's what I want. That's what I told my mom. I said I'm not going to go on the stand or anything like that, End quote. Okay, let's think about this rationally for a second. First of all, if you are truly only there for altruistic reasons and your only goal is to tell the truth and talk about what kind of person Brandon was, then what are you so afraid of? Why would you not want to testify? I don't know about you guys, but I've never been afraid of what would happen if I told the truth. Now, I may be afraid of what someone might do if I lied about them, but more importantly here, if Mike comes in here and convinces Ranger Collins that Brandon is guilty, and then they convict him in court of killing 2 innocent people in cold blood, does Mike really think that Brandon would just get 5 or 10 years in a mental hospital and then they would release him? This statement to me is just so outrageous, I don't even know what to think. Maybe you guys can tell me what I should think in the comments. All right, let's move on to the second to last thing we're going to cover in Mike's interview with Ranger Collins. This is the one time that Mike really messes up. This is what, to me, in my opinion, makes Mike look the most guilty, more than anything that he said up until now. Mike was in the interview room with Ranger Collins for over 2.5 hours, convincing Ranger Collins what a bad dude Brandon was. And several times he had to back up, retract what he was saying, and rephrase things. But this is the one time where there was absolutely no way he could take back what he just said. It could not be passed off as a slip of the tongue or a Freudian slip. It was its own independent thought and was not even part of a different statement. Again, in my opinion, and I'm not stating this as fact, but only giving my opinion, this was the equivalent to a confession. I've talked to several investigators, and every single one of them has agreed with me. All right, I'm going to play the clip for you. Let me set the stage real quick. Ranger Collins just realized that the statement that Mike said about Brandon's Myspace was not actually witnessed by him. He never actually saw it. Ranger Collins is exasperated, to say the least. You have to listen closely. It goes by very quickly. So sit up in your chair, put down your bagel, and pay attention. Okay, let's go.
Give me just a minute, Mike.
I'm sorry about that. And I understand looking at it now from where y'all are getting that. So it's just the trickiest thing now is that his computer is missing.
Well, how do you know his computer's missing?
Well, everybody said that. Have you not heard that somebody had the computer? His friends, everybody. He's not nothing to do with his computer's gone.
What's that? Who's saying that?
My mom had told me that his computer's gone. Like, Because she said that she needed to tell y'all to get that computer. I said, well, Mom, if it had changed, because I don't know why Nicole would tell me that, but if it had changed, then that change is going to be on that computer. Because you can pull it off that hard drive, the motherboard. And so supposedly my mom had just told me earlier today that the computer when we were in that room, she goes, that computer's missing. And I was like, well, I said something had to have been on there that needed to be found. Because he was all about that little Myspace.com thing.
Yeah.
Did you catch it? If you did, you're a better detective than Ranger Collins. Mike just got done getting yelled at by Ranger Collins. Mike says, quote, "It's just the trickiest thing now is that his computer's missing," end quote. Ranger Collins then comes back with, wait, how did you know his computer's missing? The reason that this is so key is that absolutely no one, and I mean no one, knew that there was a computer missing. I've talked to family members. I've read over every single investigative report connected to this case. I've read over all of Charla's statements and all of the statements of other family members that wouldn't even talk to me. I've read or watched every single recorded interview, whether it was with Ranger Collins or some other investigator. I've covered this case more extensively than anyone else in the world, and there was never any mention ever at any time that there was ever a computer missing, except here. Not one. No one, including the family, the investigators, Dennis and Norma's work, no one ever said anything about a computer missing. So the only person that would know that there was a computer missing would be the person that took it. And I can attest, after looking at the crime scene photographs, that it would be completely irrational and inconceivable that anyone could go into this house to steal a computer without noticing the two people dead on the couch. It can only be reasonable to assume that if someone stole a computer from that house between the time that they died and the time their bodies were found, that the ones that took the computer were also the ones that killed Dennis and Norma. How this fact got past Ranger Collins is absolutely beyond me and any comprehension. This should have been caught and should have been investigated. The level of police work done in this case is absolutely disgusting, and the one moment that proves it more than any point is this. There's a person sitting right in front of you telling you that there's a computer missing from your capital murder crime scene, and you just go on like nothing happened. What in the literal hell? If anyone has any explanation as to how Mike or his mom would know that there was a computer missing from the crime scene, please let me know. I'm very eager to hear from you. Okay. After Ranger Collins takes a break to calm down from learning a piece of his arrest affidavit was just completely fabricated, he finally returns to the room. You can tell his whole demeanor has changed. He's now a lot more critical of Mike and starting to ask where he was and when he had access to the Lee's house, etc. He's finally, after 2 hours, starting to ask the kind of questions that investigators should be asking. You can tell in his demeanor that he's actually kind of almost starting to look at Mike as a suspect. Also, to Joel Gibson's credit, he actually starts asking Mike about Brandon's animals that had died. Mike squirms quite a lot while answering these questions. Once again, I would suggest that you check out the full interview on YouTube. It's quite a sight to see. So when Ranger Collins starts asking Mike about where he was the night of the murders and other activities, i.e., when's the last time you had access to a piece of art, also known as a fully functional gun sitting on a shelf, Mike really starts to look uncomfortable. He starts off telling Ranger Collins that he's watching his steps now. Not sure why you need to watch your steps when you're completely innocent and truthful, but okay. Here you go.
Do you remember ever seeing a gun or anything up in that trophy room or
No, I don't.
up in the movie room?
I just told him I'm watching my steps now. No, I don't. To my memory as of now, I said it.
What do you mean watching your steps?
Like about things that I'd say. I don't want to be like, well, I'm kind of remembering. I just want to. If I don't remember for sure, I'm going to say no.
Okay. Well, and that's best. I mean, that is best. And I'm gonna, like I said, I'm just going to get a little bit of information from you, and then I'll let him finish up with the rest of the interview. Okay, Rockwall Homecoming Weekend was the last time you were there. You were up in the movie room, and then you crashed on her bed, right?
Yes, sir. I fell asleep on the couch, and about 3 a.m. I went to her room because I was sweating like crazy, and I knew that earlier that now if anybody would take offense that it was her bed, but she had said just find an empty bed. And there was the cold ceiling fan, so I fell asleep on that bed.
Okay. Where was she?
She was still in the movie room, and she had slept there throughout the whole night on that couch in the movie room where she had originally fallen asleep.
Okay. Do her parents ever come up and check, or?
They were already in Oklahoma.
For those of you that are counting, yes, you heard that right. Mike just admitted that he was in Morgan's room, which was right next to the trophy room that had the unsecured gun, all alone, all night long, with Morgan's parents already in Oklahoma. Plenty of time alone with a gun, as opposed to the 5 or 10 minutes Brandon had access to the gun, chaperoned by Morgan the whole time. Nope, still no red flags going off in Ranger Collins' mind. Nothing to see here. Keep on going. Your suspect is already locked up, remember? All right. There's a lot to see in the final minutes of this interview, but I don't want to make this more than 2 episodes. I realize we've covered a lot in these 2 episodes, and the rest you can just check out on YouTube. But the last thing we'll cover is pretty significant. When Ranger Collins starts to ask Mike where he was the night of the murders, Mike gets tripped up pretty good. I want you to pay special attention to one thing. When Ranger Collins asks Mike where he was the 16th, tell me if you don't think his answer is rehearsed, at least until he has to go back and correct himself. Just listen.
Where were you on Sunday the 16th?
Sunday the 16th, I was at my girlfriend's house, came home, and went to bed. So
all day you were at your girlfriend's house?
We went to church. Church lets out so stinking. Our church isn't even horrible.
Okay.
Got out, went to her house. And
what time did it leave out?
Church lets out on average around 12:30 to 1.
Okay.
From there, I can't remember if we had lunch or some deal. Anyways, we're at her house. I usually on Sundays just stay in Rowlett until Awana's, which is at 4:45 Awana's start. We got to get there about 4:30. And then from there we left it's over about 6:30. We don't get out of there until about 6:45 after Awana's. I usually after Awana's I go to her house, and the time I'm supposed to be out of her house on school nights is 10 o'clock. And here lately now that I'm having to wake up at 6:30 every morning, I'll be out of her. I'll be like, baby, I'm getting tired. I need to go home. It'll be like 9:30 that I'm telling her that. Okay. So I'll usually get home about, here lately now, like I said, I've been going to bed early. Getting up early. I'll usually get home around 10 and that's usually on every school night. I'm home around 10.
Okay, so back to the girlfriend's house, and then you were home by 10.
Yes, sir. And that's just the general.
That's fine.
Now hold on.
What?
As I'm saying, I get this Sunday and the last Sunday mixed up.
Not 2 days ago.
Okay.
A week ago.
Okay, yeah.
We
came home.
Okay.
Okay, right after church, I remember because my mom woke up early that morning. She was like, come give me a hug, blah, blah, and it was like, so she came come up. She goes, didn't you give your mom a kiss anymore on the cheek? So I gave her a kiss on the cheek. I was walking out and I said, Mom, what y'all doing this afternoon? Because they usually go to her fiance's mom's house for Sunday. And then that's whenever I'd said, well, me and Lindsay are going to try to come by here before y'all have to go. They ended up going to some party, or a friend's birthday party. We said, well, we're going to come by here. So me and Lindsay were out there, and
okay.
That's how my ADD head works.
That's all right. Don't worry about that. All right. You were at your house, then you go back to Awana's. 6:30, you're going to leave the church, go to your girlfriend's house, home by 10.
Yes, sir. And that's usually every Sunday.
Now you're in college, so you don't have to check in or anything like that.
Not at all. But,
no. By 10 o'clock, you're asleep?
No, I get home about 10, and I usually, because I have to get home early, because once I get in the shower, I get my second wind. Mm-hmm. So I'm usually like in bed, lights out, 12 to 12:30, lights are out by then. So I've always been a late night.
All right.
So what you just heard was Mike telling Ranger Collins, after a little bit of deductive reasoning, that he was in bed, asleep, by 12:30 a.m. the night of the murders. The only problem that he has here is that it would later be revealed when Ranger Collins got Mike's phone records, some 6 months later, that Mike made one phone call at 1:59 a.m., an hour and a half after he said he was in bed asleep. Now, ordinarily, this wouldn't be a big deal. A lot of people wake up and realize they need to reach out to someone to ask a question, then they call them, and they go back to bed. But the big deal here is that the call that Mike made pinged off of a cell tower close to Dennis and Norma's house. Now, we'll get into this in much more detail when we cover the trial, but basically, the prosecution tried to paint the picture that it's possible that the cell tower next to Mike's house was busy and it had to roam to another cell tower to make the call. I guess while that's theoretically possible in a busy neighborhood at a busy time, you cannot tell me that at 1:59 a.m. in a rural neighborhood that the cell tower was so busy that it couldn't handle a call. And it just happened to roam to a tower closer to the scene of the murders. Does Mike and the prosecution really expect us to buy that? I think we're all smarter than that. If the police are investigating a capital murder of two innocent people, and they're asking where you were the night of the murders, you had better have a better explanation as to why your phone is pinging off of a cell tower close to the murder scene than just, it roamed around 2 a.m. I talked to the cell phone expert that testified at trial, and he put this explanation at a less than 1% chance of being true. He didn't want to say 0 because technically nothing is impossible, but he said it would be as close to 0 as possible and not be 0. Needless to say that if Ranger Collins would have not arrested Brandon so quickly, and he had found out this information before he made an arrest, it's very possible that Michael Etherington would have been the one in cuffs and not Brandon Woodruff. This is not the only fact that would have steered the investigation in a different direction had Brandon not been in jail, but it is a big one. As we discussed in the episode about Brandon's interview, so much to do is made about him being an hour or two off on what time he went to Denny's. But if you ask me, that's a lot different than saying you were absolutely 100% at home asleep, and it turns out you were actually making a phone call right next to the murder scene of a double homicide. One last thing to note about Mike's own self-confessed timeline of that night. I'll bring it to you in the form of C. Derek's writer's note that he left for me. He said, Mike said that he left his girlfriend's house at 9:30 that Sunday night. Does that time sound familiar? Yep. It's the same time that Dennis and Norma Woodruff were known to be alive. Coincidence? I don't know, C. Derek. We'll leave that for our listeners to decide. Okay, it's time to wrap up these 2 episodes covering Mike Etherington's interview. As you may have guessed by now, it's definitely time for a patent-pending Scott Poggensee personal opinion. I know how you've missed them. Okay, at this point in the timeline of the investigation, Brandon is in jail. Now, there are multiple avenues of blame that we could take. You could place blame on Mike Etherington, the scorned, covetous former friend who placed so much hope into rumors he couldn't wait to run straight to the boys with badges to do his duty as a concerned citizen. Or, as I believe, someone who was in such desperate need of attention that he basically hand-carried a half-cocked narrative to anyone who could take Brandon off the street. Was he really this narcissistic? Or was he covering something up, perhaps attempting to lead the investigators' attention away from his own direction? He did have access to the missing gun, after all. His own mother even knew Dennis and Norma's cause of death long before it was publicly announced. Whatever the true reasoning for his deception, it's all inconsequential. Spoiler alert, nothing happens to him. He's still running free in the world to this very day. Perhaps even next door to some of you. Or do we place the blame on the investigators for not following up on the leads offered by Mike Etherington and instead exhibiting them as facts for an arrest warrant? After all, it had already seemed like Brandon was the only suspect they truly cared about up until this point, and this gave them the ammunition they needed to accomplish their goal. Angry at the situation or not, Ranger Collins does not reveal to the judge that signed the arrest affidavit that the accusations contained in his sworn document were the misled ramblings of an idiot. It has always seemed to me that if it's later found out that something in an arrest affidavit is found to be untrue, there should, at the very least, be a new document drafted and presented again. After all, what if the story about killing the cats is really what gave Judge Leonard the balls to sign this ill-fated document? What if, had it been absent of that story, he would have gone back to Ranger Collins and said, "You know what? We need more." That's what I believe he should have done at the very least. After all, inflammatory statements like, "I really hate my fucking parents and I wish they were fucking dead," really do seem to show that the person that you're investigating is, and could be, homicidal. But what if we knew that those statements were false? What if we knew that those statements never existed? Would Judge Leonard have still signed the arrest affidavit? We'll never know, because Ranger Collins keeps this information close to the vest. I can only assume that he was just hoping that no one would ever find out. Well, guess what? We found out, and you're exposed. His mission was accomplished. He had a suspect behind bars. The end justifies the means. Finally, we could blame the Texas Rangers as a whole for not offering any type of social media training to its investigators. Granted, it was still in its infancy, but Myspace wasn't necessarily a new thing in October of 2005. Still, the investigators react to its existence as though it's being explained to them in a foreign language. You can tell by their own words that they are clueless to exactly what it is and have no idea how to access or manipulate it. Now, we are going to cover a lot of times that the criminal justice system failed Brandon Woodruff in the upcoming episodes when we cover the trial in detail. However, the fact that Mike Etherington was never seriously considered a suspect is, in my opinion, the most egregious of these errors. I'm not saying that Mike Etherington killed Dennis and Norma Woodruff. Please don't misunderstand me. However, what I am saying is that his actions, his words, and his body language were enough, at the very least, to investigate him further. When he points out there's a computer missing from a capital murder scene, or embellishes a story just to make Brandon look worse, how in the world did Ranger Collins not catch on to this? Mike and his minions definitely warranted a much closer look. The problem was that Brandon was already arrested. Short of a confession, Ranger Collins was not about to admit that he jumped the gun. I've reached out to Ranger Collins twice now and asked him for comment and asked him to answer some of the questions that I have. He has yet to respond. Maybe someday he will. In the last letter I sent him, I put the web address of this podcast on the bottom of the letter. Who knows if he's listening or not? All I can say is that if you are listening, Ranger Collins, it's time to admit that there were mistakes made, and it's your moral, ethical, and divine duty to help the investigation that's now ongoing to find the real killers and free Brandon from prison. In addition to contacting Ranger Collins, I've also reached out to Mike Etherington for comment. Mike actually did talk to me twice, once over Facebook Messenger and once over some text messages. I will make him the same offer I made to him in private, in public now. If you want to come on the podcast and give your side of the story, I will broadcast it live so there are no edits. I will give you the floor and let you talk. I will do everything I can for you to get your side of the story out there in the public domain. However, in my opinion, the more Mike and Ranger Collins keep quiet, the more it's solidified that they know what they did was wrong. Ultimately, it's not like any of the 3 reasons I listed earlier seem to matter much in the eyes of the law. Blame aside, Brandon stayed incarcerated, just as the investigators, Mike, Dustin, Joe, and a couple other names I've beaten into the ground so far, wanted. It was as though the purpose of any of the interviews covered in this season so far was never to find the person responsible for the death of Dennis and Norma Woodruff. No, the purpose was for them to find a way to place Brandon in jail. No matter how shady, underhanded, and disgustingly unprofessional, they got their wish. They locked up a 19-year-old kid whose only crime was being gay and wanting to keep that life private, away from the rest of his life. All right. In the next episode, we will cover Charla's second interview with Ranger Collins. You will not want to miss hearing all about how Brandon's once clueless and disinterested sister now comes full circle to be Brandon's most ardent accuser. Why, you might ask? Let's just suffice it to say it might have something to do with who Brandon likes to sleep with. Here's a preview of her talking to Ranger Collins all about it. Next week is going to be quite a doozy. Until then, stay aware, stay strong, and get involved. See you then.
Charla, you know that this is going to be videotaped, right? And this is different from the other night, because the other night you had attorneys here with you.
Yeah.
And but you're the one who contacted us. We didn't contact you, right? So I want to give you every opportunity to tell us whatever you want to tell us. And you know, I may ask you some questions just as follow-up, but I'm just going to let you kind of talk and tell us everything that you know. This is Terry Jones. I think Terry was in here, wasn't he?
Yes.
Now, we have already done a very extensive interview with you. I mean, I think it lasted 2.5, 3 hours or something.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know that we got lots of information from you. Okay. But again, you contacted us and said that there was some other stuff that you wanted to tell us that you kind of thought was maybe strange or something.
Yeah.
That your brother was doing. And yeah. Let me ask you, do you suspect your brother?